Okay. Will the meeting of the Agua Dulce Town Council please come to order? This is our community meeting held October 11, 2023. At this moment, I'd like to welcome everybody here that showed up, and I would like to ask for everyone to rise before we have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Formal letter you guys gave on to the family council, so we appreciate your condolences. And I'm working in the field tonight, so I got radio in the background and stuff. So emails and texts I got from the community. I know that you guys do care greatly for your law enforcement out here, so we appreciate that. Okay, so for the months of September, we had 2 Part 1 crimes, totaling 6 for the year. And our property crimes, we just had a single property crime, which brings our total to 38 and 44 total crimes for the year so far. In the month of September, we had 62 calls, 62 service calls out here. That got broken down to 30 calls for service and 32 observational. That's like self-initiated traffic stops, welfare checks, that kind of thing. So that's pretty much about it. You guys got anything for me?
Great. Let's find out. Anybody got any question for Orlando?
I do. There was a post on one of our local Facebook pages about a week ago, and I was wondering if we have any new halfway houses in the Agua Dulce area, because one of the local residents was actually sitting at the Cowboy Tavern having lunch, I think it was, and their Mercedes was parked outside unlocked.
No, that's not a halfway house. That was a gentleman that was a guest of someone down the street, who's also a fellow ex-con, if you will.
Right.
So that situation was handled.
Very good.
Yep.
Deputy Martinez, what about the incident that happened on Sierra Highway? I think it was last week also, across from the fire station, where horses were let loose and water lines were cut. Can you give us any information about that?
I was not aware of that one. I'll look into that and see what that was about.
Okay.
If you can email me like a date and an address, I can find it really quickly. But it was nothing that got brought to my attention.
Okay. I will do that. I can give you the date and the address.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks.
Right.
I have something that it's probably a little out of context since disaster planning's later, but Deputy Martinez asked me at the parade if we would be able to put on a tech class for the sheriff's deputies.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still interested.
Okay. The bottom line is that we will be having a class, and there'll be 3 classes in January and 3 in February, and you're invited to join. It will be at the library.
I did get a chance to briefly discuss the case with the county council, who's prosecuting the property owners. As of right now, everything is in court and litigation proceedings are scheduled for, the latest one is going to be scheduled for December. I think last time I mentioned that one of the defense attorneys had surgery, and so they had to postpone the latest meeting. They did have one to discuss the submittals to building and safety, as well as a submittal meant for Department of Regional Planning. We did take a look at that submittal. It was incorrect, meaning that they didn't provide the proper information, so we kicked it back to them. So as of right now, their consultants will need to resubmit some plans to us. They are aware of that. Our next DA conference with The owners and their consultants will be October 25th at the Santa Clarita Valley District Office. And we'll have an open discussion with those folks what needs to be provided. Any questions?
Any questions?
No, but thank you for taking the time to come along and update us. It's appreciated.
Thank you for the presentation. We might have some coming up for you on the other items here, but item B, we have Los Angeles County staff regarding the Sleepy Valley Water Company and failed adjacent septic system. Sounds like this is probably a health department issue, possibly. Does anybody have any update on that by any chance?
Yeah, as you know, I'm the treasurer of the Sleepy Valley Water Company. The water company was able to put a nitrate filtration system in place, and the most recent readings that we have from our testing laboratory is that we're getting nitrates of 0.05 milligrams per litre, which is exactly at the level that LA County mandated, which is half the state's allowable level.
Okay.
Separately, we have surveyed the U.S. Forestry Service land adjacent to our water tank, as I mentioned, with the assistance Mike Garcia's staff. And we found two locations which have the potential for water. It's about 175 to 200 feet. They both meet the minimum offset of more than 200 feet from the nearest septic systems, and they have an expected yield of about 80 gallons a minute because they're actually intersections of two water faults. We have approached LA County Public Health to set up a conference call so that we can discuss the permitting process with them, because it's going to be on Forestry Service land, and we are waiting to hear back from them with bated breath.
Okay.
So that's
Great.
the update.
Okay.
So the septic's still broken, but the mitigation measures that the water company have taken are allowing us to meet this requirement that the county has imposed.
Sure. So if not temporary, I mean, it sounds like it's doing what it's supposed to do, which is great.
Yeah, we obviously have to keep monitoring the nitrate levels, because as that septic tank fills up, they tend to go up. So they can go as high as 18, which is way off the scale. But we also spent about $2,700 sending divers into our 105,000 gallon storage tank so that we could suck the sludge. There was about a 3/4 inch of sediment at the bottom of it, and we felt that the nitrates might be absorbed into that sludge because they've come in from the pumps in the well, and that seems to have helped as well. So, 4,000 gallons of water we wasted doing that.
Well, oftentimes there's a little layer of gold underneath that sludge, so hopefully they were able to share that gold with you that they found at the bottom there.
They didn't mention that.
Oh, they didn't? Oh, okay. I bring it up to them.
I'm going to have to pan Spring Street now to see if I can find it.
Next up, we have current ongoing issues, again with the 5th District, Water Conservation Ordinance, Public Works, GDDs, which is the garbage disposal, if I'm not mistaken, and LA County response to SB 552. So if anybody has anything current they'd like to share regarding those three items, now's the time to do so.
As far as it's actually called now North County Solid Waste Collection Services, there's really no new update. We're still working on the draft EIR and targeting probably late end of this year as far as release, but we'll let you know as we get closer.
Great. Thank you much. One question. Each week or so, Agua Dulce receives the plans that are filed in the Agua Dulce CSD area. And one thing that kind of stands out is we've had a number of vacant properties, at least on the county site. When you go on the county website, it shows that these properties are vacant, and yet we noticed that someone's trying to legalize 2 storage sheds and some pergolas and 2 containers and whatnot. And it's always been my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, at least I'm looking for an education on this. When property is zoned vacant, as I understand it, in LA County, it has to remain vacant unless there is a permit for a single family residence that after the residence is built and completed, then they're allowed to put in accessory units such as barns and things of that nature. So how do you view vacant land, and what should we tell people that always have the question? Because a lot of people, they just want to buy 5 acres and bring all their horses and cars that don't run and motorhomes and everything else and plant them there and use them for outdoor storage. But what's Public Works angle on these items?
Unfortunately, I am not familiar. Yosh, do you by any chance have any information on that?
A little bit, and it's not really related to building and safety. Well, it's kind of related to building and safety and public works, but most of the questions that you brought up are handled by Department of Regional Planning, as far as zoning and what's allowed for land use. So, in general, what you stated, and I don't want to talk for regional planning. I'm sure they have all their nuances for their process, but what you stated was pretty accurate. If you are proposing some kind of development or land use, that has to be reviewed in some way or form by regional planning and be approved by them for that land use. It has to be zoned correctly for the proposed land use, and the land use has to be approved. So in your example, you buy 5 acres and you want to bring your horses on, that's considered land use and or development. And they would have to go through regional planning to get that type of approval.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Josh. And so basically regional planning or probably even zoning enforcement may be the offices to direct the questions to.
Yes. So if you notice 5 acres and all of a sudden you see horses in a stable or something like that, zoning enforcement would be probably the first people that you contact, and they could check their records and they'll go out and investigate.
Okay. It just kind of struck me where I see where they've actually made an application to legalize these things, and to my knowledge, there's no way to legalize them until there's actually a home there. But I guess maybe the thing, and I don't know, Mary, do you know if we're able to follow these projects as they go through regional planning, or do we know?
Sometimes they are rejected. Sometimes they are told that they have to comply. I mean, I've sent inquiries directly to the planner on questions that I have, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I will. How about if I email the planner on that item on the legalization of the pergola, and just to get some verification and clarification on what vacant land really means.
Yeah, I think that's really, if we could just have a punch list, because I have a number of people that call me and they think that we have a big town council office here at Boston Henry Company, and so I usually try to do my best to answer their questions. But in the past, I've always expressed that, you know, if it's zoned vacant and it's being taxed as vacant, then it must remain vacant until a permit is pulled.
Right.
If they can give us some kind of a statement as to what's allowed, it just kind of struck me on this one where they were going to legalize the storage sheds, and to my knowledge, you can't legalize them. But I think it'd be best to hear from regional planning on that, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so, I'll make a note to send an email to the planner.
Yeah, if we can just get a definition or whatever they show, that's the uses would be great. All right. Well, thank you everybody from the county staff that showed up for tonight's meeting. That was wonderful, and the reports are great. So now we're going to move on to the 34th Assembly District. Assemblymember Tom Lackey, Carlo Basel is his spokesperson for our area here, if Carlo is here.
Yes, I turn out to be here.
Yeah, good.
Let's see. Yep, I'm still alive.
Okay, it looks like you.
It's always nice to be alive. I've got just a small legislative report, just checking in basically. The trauma within the justice system and seeking a remedy that's appropriate. These are victims of pretty serious hasn't been. Assemblyman Lackey has been very much at the forefront of cannabis legislation. A lot of it has to do with public safety, which he believes in, and differentiating between legal and illegal cannabis. And one of the things he's done is authored, and it was signed, AB 1126, which was a protection of the cannabis universal symbol. I know it's pretty esoteric, but it's a way of, so far, it seems, illegal cannabis has been commingled with legal, and this is a way of keeping them separate and keeping them on track. The other thing he wanted us to mention was the great success of AB 56. Let me see, where is that thing? Sorry to be shuffling. But it was the AB 14. It was the measure that makes sex trafficking of a minor a serious felony eligible for the 3 strikes. It's amazing it wasn't before. I think it might have been in the recent structure of demoting some felonies, it might have been reshuffled in that time period. But this is a way of pushing it to the forefront and making it a serious felony again. At first, there was a lot of opposition in the legislature, but thanks to everybody, people like you and me, calling up their legislators, and it's not just in Santa Clarita, Agua Dulce, and the Antelope Valley, it's throughout California they called, and they pushed all the recalcitrant legislators. If I remember right, they must have been calling Governor Newsom's office also, because he signed it pretty quickly.
Wow, good. Okay.
It's an example of what people can do when you get fired up about it. Pick a target, work on it, you'll get change. And that's a great lesson.
Squeaky wheel gets the oil, kind of like.
And I bet it was pretty squeaky there for a while. All right, that's about it. And there's any questions?
Carlo? All right, well, thank you for taking the time to be here with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody, our office number is 661-267-7636.
Okay.
Any questions? Somebody else there during all the office hours. And I know there's a real busy time of holidays and everything else. I hope everybody's safe journeys. That's about it.
We've also got your email here if anybody wants it. It's in our agenda. So that's great.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Next up, we have California 21st Senate District, Senator Scott Wilk, represented by Jack Danielson. Jack, are you here tonight? I don't see Jack. Huh. Okay. Well, if Jack shows up, we'll come back to him. Next up, we have SB 552, drought planning for small water suppliers and rural communities. The question is, how does this affect private domestic well owners? And we've had mixed messages given to us. Some say, oh, no, that doesn't apply at all. And others say, oh, yeah, it does. And we're still looking for clarification on that. So hopefully we can get that defined and they can remove domestic, single-family residential domestic well owners from the type of recording and submitting of the information for the wells. So now we have the U.S. 27th Congressional District, Mike Garcia. Jackie Owens is here with us tonight. Jackie?
Hey, good evening, everyone. I hope you all are well. It's nice to see you. Greetings from Congressman Garcia. I wanted to first say thank you to the Adtc Women's Club for hosting and allowing our office to use the club during our remote office hours. So thank you for that. In 2024, I'm going to go back around with the new rotation, so I'll probably be reaching out again to schedule that in the new year. But thank you for that, and for everyone that came out. And for Chris, Chris was a great, we got to talk about things. I don't know if we solved the world's problems, but I appreciate his company. So as you may have are following in the news right now, there's a lot going on in Washington, and unfortunately, nothing of it seems to be very good. Today, the House voted for Steve Scalise. That was their choice, GOP choice. Just about 2 hours ago, they were going to go to the House floor for a vote, and it didn't look like they were going to have the vote, so they withdrew that, and just trying to avoid a lot of the ugliness we saw with Kevin McCarthy. So they're going to go back to closed doors and try to come back and get a speaker finalized. With that, though, it's really holding up a lot of the legislation the congressman wants to put forward. And as I've shared with you in the past, one of them is the Sergeant Steve Owen bill it's defending the Defenders Act. And what that would do would be charging anyone in the death of a peace officer, responsible for the death of a peace officer, a federal offense. So we would be able to get around some of the more lenient legislation that we see right now currently in LA County from our DA. I think he's got some really good support. He's got actually a bicameral support. Tom Cotton from Arkansas is promoting on the Senate side. So once they get things going on the speaker and start moving and doing the work that they're sent to do, I think we're cautiously optimistic that that'll get passed, and just continue to support our men and women who keep us safe. So I will keep you posted. It's really hard to explain why that's happening the way it is, but it's happening, and we'll hopefully get through it. The congressman is being the optimist that he is. He's working hard. He's been selected for a bicameral committee to help navigate, once we do get a speaker, to navigate the budget, which has to be decided on by November 17th.
I'm going to be busy.
Yeah. So as far as Israel, I'm sorry to have to keep referring to the news. I try. It's quite overwhelming as we're seeing what's happening over there. Just a brief update. Currently, there is no U.S. evacuations right now. People, if they want to leave, can leave commercial. If that changes, our office, please reach out to us. We'll let you know. If people want to find out about friends and family and they want to know who to contact, again, they can contact our office, and we'll be able to put them in contact with the right people. But they're recommending commercial flights out if people want to get out.
Okay.
And then, let's see. On Friday, the 13th, and I think I sent over the email for this, the congressman will be hosting the community project funding, which is a great opportunity, a grant opportunity for nonprofits and organizations to get, I think, up to $5 million is the ceiling for that. So if, I know Acton had, they were looking at a softball field they wanted to pursue. So if the town council has something like that, that's a nonprofit status that we can go ahead. Even if you're not sure, it'd be beneficial to jump in on the meeting. It's going to be virtual. You'll have a chance to meet with our legislative team and have Q&A to find out even if this is something that's feasible. It'd definitely be worth the time. Whether if you attend or don't attend, that doesn't affect people applying for the grant. It's just that we want to give them the best tools possible before we go ahead and submit that and go through the process, so they can be as successful as possible. I think that's everything for me on my notebook. And you know what, though? Can I just get clarification? Because I am in communication with Senator Wilk's team, and I'll ask them to get you that information about the domestic well owners. Was that SB 92?
It's actually SB 552.
Okay, 552. Okay, 552. All right, very good. So I will ask them to reach out to you guys and get that information before the next meeting for you.
Great, we appreciate it. Thank you for showing.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Jackie, can I ask a question?
Yes.
You talked about this nonprofit meeting. If I got an email, I have misplaced it. Could you resend that to me?
Absolutely. Yep. In fact, I think our DC team just sent out the link to register. So what I'll do is I'll send that over to you, and Mary, you can go ahead and register directly with that link. And there's 2 sessions. You have a choice of 2 sessions. I think the first one starts at 10 o'clock.
And that's on Friday?
Correct, Friday. The first one, I believe, is at 10. I don't have it in front of me. I gave away all my flyers, and I believe the second one is 12:30.
Okay.
And I think they're scheduling an hour, 90 minutes, but the team will be on hand to answer as many questions that are needed to be answered. So
Perfect. Thank you.
all right, I'll send that out to you, Mary.
Great.
Thank you again. All right, Jackie. Next up.
Don, can I break in? It's Carl Basile.
Please.
I printed up the analysis for SB 552, and it seems like some small, because it makes tiers of water districts. This tier is so many. This other tier is a little bit smaller, and about the only one I could think of is the Sleepy Valley Water District that would have this law applicable to it. But you're afraid that maybe it's for single water user?
Yeah, well, at one point they talk about community systems, but then in the definitions page, I believe it spells out a small community water system is a single-family residential well, which doesn't make sense. It never has been in the past. So we just want clarification.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of contradicts itself within the wording of what they've given us. So I think it was a misprint, but you know, sometimes these things get approved and accepted and adopted and go into effect, and 5 years down the road you start getting this citation or notice of violation because you haven't been filling out the W&Ds or whatever 3-letter initial they've got for whatever report you're supposed to be filing. And for the life of me, I cannot imagine single residences filling out what they require. But you know, I think it should be exempt. But nevertheless, they spelled it out and put it in there, and it may have been on purpose to where someone would just overlook it, where they think, oh, that can't apply, and yet it's there. So I'm looking for clarification from someone who is in charge that can say, yes, that was a misprint and that should be stricken, because as it is right now, it's definitely worded in there to where private single-family residential wells are included in this reporting that's required. So hopefully that's not the case, but we'll see if we can get some answers. And I think Jackie's on top of it, so she's the right person. All right. Okay. We'll see.
Yeah. No, I'm reading through our analysis of it, and that's you're right. It's very vague.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the actual definition page,
that's what I'm looking at. Yeah.
What is a small water system and what is a community system? And it actually spells out there. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but somewhere in there it spells out that a single-family residential well is required to do the filing. And I think it was a misprint, but you know how those things go.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's a misprint in the health department requirements as far as well yield tests that was never supposed to apply for additions or remodels, and yet when you go for an addition or a remodel, they stick it to you as far as making you prove that you've got a well and that the well's acceptable. So I know how those things can go. And maybe that wasn't the spirit of it, but it'd be nice to find out.
All right.
Because we can either fight it now or fight it 5 years.
I agree. It's better to hit it now, where you're looking at it. But
yeah.
All right. But we are looking at it. And,
sounds good.
All right. Look up at the definitions, and that's the place where we look. All right.
I think definitions is where it actually shows
Yeah,
up.
second page.
Or third page.
Section 1, part 256. Yeah, definitions. All right, thank you.
All right, no problem.
All right, well, I'll get back to you too.
Okay,
all right.
appreciate
Chris
it.
has got his hand up.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yes.
So I think that the current state of SB 552 is a little chaotic. I'll just give you one example. The primers that have been given on SB 552 talk about grants being available from the state to small water companies to go out and buy backup generators for their wells so that they can function in the event of a power outage or a natural disaster. And when you actually peel the layer off the onion and understand what that really means is that the State Water Board identified a handful of water companies throughout the state, and I think there was only one in LA County. And even though Sleepy Valley Water Company is connected to the Davenport network, which lost 5 million customer minutes of electrical supply during these public safety power shutoffs, we weren't, picked by the State Water Board as a suitable candidate to have a generator for our backup water system. And when you then look at what's currently available, the State Water Board says, you know what, we did this pilot program, there's no more money available at the moment, so don't bother applying. So the public perception is, hey, look, we're going to help you get through this. The reality when you start to read the text is that the cupboards are bare. So it's going to be interesting to see how this rolls out, because I think the promise is way ahead of the delivery.
Well, and oftentimes that's the way it goes. And of course, water's a precious resource, and they jump on that. And a lot of times, people think, oh, this is great. It's going to make us, we're going to have better water, or what. Now our well's going to be overflowing our tank. And then they realize, oh no, the only thing that's overflowing is your paperwork that you get to file. So, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I know that in the past, private wells have always been excluded. Actually, private wells up to 4 connections has always been excluded. But for some reason, they included it, because I read through it thinking, oh, I know that they're not going to affect private wells, and sure enough, here it was in black and white, showing that they were going to affect it. So anyway, we'll see what everybody comes up with, and I'm sure we can get it solved. All right, thank you. Next up, we have the Santa Clara River Watershed Area Steering Committee, Measure W. Our watershed coordinator, Peter Massey, is here with us tonight. Peter?
Peter's actually not here. Neither he nor Amanda could make the meeting, so asked me to pass on the information.
Okay.
And I'm going to turn it over to Chris at some point because he attended the website or the workshop also. But back on September 26th, there was a workshop for small water systems, and it was really for facilities that manage water supply for at least 15 connections up to 3,000. And bottom line, there's a lot of even those within our community. Chris down at Sleepy Valley, Sierra Colony, Davenport Estates, North Trails, the water systems here in Agua Dulce that it will affect. And it, as Chris, it was frustrating from my perspective, because I was hoping that they'd say something about the individual private well owners, but that was not what this workshop was about. But I feel Chris's frustration because they made it appear as if we're going to help you, we're going to do what we can, and it's an onerous bill, but we've got you.
Yeah.
But in the big picture of things, I don't think they do.
Yeah.
So, Chris, I'm going to turn that over to you because you were front and center on this.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to go pick a cat up from the vet midway through, so I only got the first hour or so of it. But the gist of it for a small water company is that you have to join a mutual aid network, so that if there's a natural disaster, you can then rely on other networks adjacent to you for whatever that might be. Yeah. By the beginning of January, you also have to be measuring the well depths below slab, which, as in our case, we do regularly already. You have to, by January 1st of 2024, have a backup power supply in place, just in case anything goes wrong with power supply, which is very common in our part of the world. Then you have to I think by the beginning of 2027, you have to have what's called an intertie, which means you have to be connected to another adjacent water system, which is a very expensive undertaking. When you look at the 2 miles of pipeline at 20 inches that went in along Valley Sage Road, that was a $5.3 million bond that was put forward for that. And that's a huge amount of money for these small water systems to undertake. The less expensive option is a new well, so that you can put a new well in, but you put a hole down 400 or 500 feet and all the permits, and you're probably somewhere in the region of $100,000 to do something like that. So that's the next phase. Then after that, you have to have meters on each connection that will tell you if there's a leak. That I think is sometime whenever. And then I think by the beginning of 2030, I think if I'm remembering right, you have to have fire flow. You have to meet the fire department's fire flow requirements. Now, if you've got a network like ours, which has 2.5-inch distribution pipes, you're never going to meet fire flow. So basically what that means is you've got to dig everything up along the sides of the roads around your distribution system and put an 8-inch main in. So again, that's millions of dollars. The money that seems to be floating around from the State Water Board at the moment, frankly, seems to be directed towards people like LA County Regional Planning and Public Health, so they can figure out what they're going to do about this. That money is really, I don't think at the moment, flowing down to the water providers. It's really flowing down to the agencies who will have to deal with implementing SB 552 in their own local areas.
Okay, great. Well, we appreciate the report, and we look forward to finding out more about it. But it sounds like at this point, it's not benefiting the small guy, so to speak.
Right. I will go ahead and post the workshop slides and anything else from that on our website so that those small water companies in our community can at least look into that.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. Next up, we have the presentation. Let's see. Am I missing something here? Next Santa Clara River Watershed Steering Committee meeting, October 19th, which is a week from now, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Great. That works out good with most of our schedules. It's in Santa Clarita City Hall down on Valencia Boulevard. So whoever can attend that, fantastic. It's there waiting for you. Next up, we have presentations and discussions. The Climate Action Plan Workshop. We got a presentation from the Department of Regional Planning, Cameron Robertson. So Cameron, looks like you're here. I see you up there in the upper right-hand corner. The floor is all yours.
Fantastic. Thank you, Don. Thank you, everyone, for having us again at the meeting tonight. My name is Cameron Robertson. I'm a senior planner with the Department of Regional Planning. I'm also here with Thuy Hua, who's a supervising planner. So we're here to do a quick community charrette tonight on the draft 2045 Climate Action Plan. I'm going to start by providing just a quick review of the project information, which was presented last month. Afterwards, we'll jump onto an online charrette to discuss community priorities and to get ideas from the community and answer any questions that you might have. So for the charrette, you're going to need either a phone or an internet browser to answer the questions. So next slide, please, Twee. So as discussed in our last presentation, the 2045 Climate Action Plan is the county's roadmap for GHG reductions, greenhouse gas reductions. The CAP sets targets for the years 2030, 2035, and 2045, which are all in line with state targets. To meet these emission targets, the CAP identifies strategies, measures, and actions to reduce emissions from community activities, which includes municipal operations. And the CAP provides a roadmap for project implementation and possible funding down the line. So next slide. So based on our analysis, the majority of emissions are from transportation and buildings alone, but it does include other sectors. This analysis provides us with a good understanding of where our efforts need to focus to achieve the greatest reductions. Next slide. So by 2045, we're aiming to reduce our emissions 83% from 2015 levels. So with the actions proposed by the CAP, we can meet the county and state targets in 2030, 2035, and 2045. Next slide. So to meet these emissions reduction targets, the draft 2045 CAP roadmap is made up of 10 strategies, 25 measures, and 94 actions. Tonight, we're going to be discussing a handful of measures that are relevant to the community. These measures are programs that support the larger strategies and are made up of smaller actions. But measures are a good place for us to discuss big ideas and implementation without going too broad or too deep into the weeds with details. Next slide. So if you want to review the CAP in more detail, please visit the project website on the screen, planning.lacounty.gov/climate. Next slide. So now we're going to jump into the planned charrette, which again is on community priorities. Next slide. So here's our agenda tonight. We will be using the Mentimeter online application so that we can have an interactive discussion on the CAP. So first we're going to go through instructions on the sign-in process. We're then going to do a ranking exercise to determine priority CAP measures. We'll have a section for open-ended responses to get thoughts from you. And then we'll have a Q&A section at the end. So please note that the comments submitted tonight will be retained by us to help inform the project. So please don't submit anything that you won't feel comfortable having other folks see. All right, next slide. So let's get started if you all are ready. So there are two ways to sign in. The first is to use your internet browser to enter the website and code. The other way is to access it using your phone using the QR code on the screen. So we're going to provide some quick instructions for each method, so don't worry if there are any issues. Space, conservation, and acquisition. There's a tie for second place with increased energy resilience, such as installing microgrids and increasing the use of recycled water and gray water, including dual waste piping in new development. Coming in last is decarbonizing existing buildings, which includes transitioning appliances away from natural gas. So great, it looks like we've got 4 responses, so I think we could probably move on to the next slide.
Cameron, how many slides?
Done. So we have just this last. So this is an open response slide for folks, and then the one after is a Q&A. Yeah. So yeah, we're sensitive of your long agenda tonight, so we'll try to keep this short. Okay, so on this one, we'd like to hear if you have any ideas for addressing emissions and climate change in your community. So if there's something you haven't seen in the list of priorities, or if there's something you'd like to see during planning or implementation, please let us know. To submit your idea, just type into the box and press submit. You are welcome to submit more than one comment. When you're finished submitting comments, hit next step. And this will take you to a next page where you can vote on your favorite comments. So you have 3 votes for that. And once you're done, please hit submit votes. So now we'll give you a few minutes to submit your answers and your votes afterward. If you have a question, hit the open Q&A button. Here you can see a list of questions if they've been asked. Down at the bottom is an Ask New Question button. Hit that and you can type your new question. Make sure to hit the Submit button. And we'll give a few minutes for folks to submit their questions. Let's see. Chris just put in the chat that we should pay attention to the recent actions of the UK government. They have similarly aggressive GHG objectives. They walk back their high-speed rail plans and are also reconsidering heat pumps instead of natural gas heaters, as they're either too expensive or too early to deliver customer benefits. Okay. So are there any parameters that will allow rural communities to not be forced to use electricity as opposed to natural gas and propane? This is a good question. In the revised climate action plan, we've made sure to essentially give outs to rural communities, and it takes into consideration varying communities with different climates, geography, infrastructure, and sole source dependency challenges, so that they do not necessarily have to meet the same standards. Also, to highlight is that the climate action plan at this point is a policy document, and it will not require anybody to make these changes at this time. Further on, if there are ordinances that are passed, there may be changes that are required at that time, but the cap itself does not specifically require that residences change their appliances over. It meets that standard because the state may be passing legislation to start to wean some communities off of natural gas. But at this time, the cap doesn't specifically require that, and the cap also makes specific considerations for rural communities. Okay, I think that's it for us. So if you want to review the climate action plan, please go to the project website. If there are any questions, email us at climate@planning.lacounty.gov. The climate action plan will be going to public hearing in front of Regional Planning Commission on November 15th. So if you have any questions or comments, please contact us. Thank you all for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Cameron. I appreciate your efforts and taking the time to be here with us tonight. And look forward to working with you in the future.
Definitely. Thanks, Don.
Thank you. All right. So next up, we have any other questions for Cameron? I don't see any. So thank you. Zoe International update and future plans. Looks like we have Esther is here. Esther, you're on mute.
That's great. I'm also on. My name's David Cox, and yeah, it's really a privilege for us to be able to come in and share. I want to honor our time. How much time do you have for this segment?
We've got about 10 minutes. So
okay,
yeah.
Great. Personal intro. I serve as the COO for Zoe International. My background, I've got 30 years law enforcement, including human trafficking task forces, also serving with ICAC, which is Internet Crimes Against Children. And I think, even recently, there's been so much talk that child trafficking is real, and it is. And I have to say, I commend this community for caring so much and for helping care for some of these victims and being behind some of their success stories. We've been combating child trafficking since 2002. We work in 5 nations, and we do prevention, rescue, restoration. It was actually several years ago that we had a U.S. presidential task force visit our 33-acre campus in Thailand, and it was there that they really were impressed with results we were getting, and they asked us if we would consider doing this work in the U.S. And that was always within our heart. And but that's ultimately how we purchased some acreage in Acton to actually open a home to do short-term care for kids who've been commercially sexually trafficked. We do partner with local law enforcement agencies and government agencies in any country we work in. In fact, 2 weeks ago, Assemblymember Tom Lackey was in our office collaborating, and we so appreciate him and his efforts, especially SB 14, which you heard about. Our organization got behind that as well too, which made trafficking a child a serious felony. If you intimidate a witness, that was a serious felony, but you could sell the child month after month after month, and that was not. But that law just got signed into the books, and we're really appreciative of their efforts. Zoe International's leadership, we're actively involved and aware of the work here in Acton, and we work closely with our county leaders, our local partners, local law enforcement. They're fantastic, and our goal is really to provide restoration and healing, and what we're trying to do is find a workable model. Like what we do in Thailand is different than what we do here. You have to work within local laws and local, there's various local policies, and we are restricted by certain county and state laws that don't allow us to do certain things that we would believe would actually protect youth more and provide further healing more. So we invest significantly financially into the work that we do here in Acton, well outside of what the county provides. So we'll invest thousands monthly. We'll staff far above required ratios. Sometimes it's probably 3 times the amount of what's required is what we'll actually staff. We're very selective on who we hire. We invest into security. As you notice, if you've seen the property out there, we have try to do a beautiful estate gate, but we do night guard as well. We implement best practices. And in the places where best practices are not effective, we work really hard to innovate where needed. And Esther will explain some of that when she starts sharing her portion. And I want you to know, too, we even limit the number of youth that we allow into the home. We're not even maxing out that home. And part of the reason is we really just want to find a very good workable model before we would ever expand it. So we're slow to move, and we're really keeping a big picture in mind, not just for our home, but for any home in California and any home in the nation that wants to help care for these precious kids that have been through horrible trauma. And we are seeing results at our home that other homes haven't seen. And I think some of it's the innovation that our team has been working hard to do. And this is a treatment center. So we, as of February, we have state licensed mental health staff on site. And they do individual care plans for each of our kids that are there. And I want to introduce Esther Yu. She truly is one of the top experts in the field. She gives direct oversight to our home there, as well as our advocacy work that we are doing here in Los Angeles. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Esther.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, I'm Esther Yu. I'm the Assistant Western Regional Director at Zoe International. I've been with Zoe for 11 years. I've worked 5 years out in Thailand and 6 years here in LA County. I sit on the LA Human Trafficking Task Force, and I attend monthly meetings with all of our law enforcement partners, which include local, federal, the sheriffs, the LAPD, all of our FBI, all of our partners, as we're engaging in strategies to work with our youth. We've been open for 2 years. We got our state license August 2021. Since we opened, we've served 21 different children, ages 12 to 17 years old, all female. And I can tell you, since we first opened, with every challenge that we've faced, we have always adapted and changed and poured resources and strategized to see how we can win with these children. What we have discovered is that the county and state laws and policies make it very difficult to protect our children and sometimes our communities. I'm sure you hear in the news about a lot of the juvenile justice reform, criminal justice reform, defunding the police. All of those things have impacted our work, unintended consequences, because when they defunded the police and LAPD, they lost a great deal of money and wiped out our human trafficking unit detectives who we work closely with when we were investigating cases for our children. These laws, when Governor Newsom signed the law, Senate Bill 357, to repeal the law where law enforcement could cite individuals that were loitering or soliciting prostitution on known streets where children and victims of trafficking were. That is why you see an increase in recent years of the uptick of violence and the numbers of victims that are standing on the streets. Sierra Highway is, what we are hearing is it's becoming as bad as South LA at this point, because wherever there are those motels, those streets, you'll see people standing out there. And before law enforcement can go and cite them and discover who are children, who are victims of trafficking, not there by choice. But when Governor Newsom signed that law, it made it very difficult, and they had to do new strategies to find the victims. And so Zoe was at the forefront of trying to encourage Governor Newsom not to sign that bill, but he did end up signing that. And what I can tell you is social workers consistently tell us that the youth who have come to our home have never done better than at our home. I know there have been a lot of concerns with, police involvement. One of the things I wanted to explain, which even our local sheriff's department didn't know, because I was on the call with them for 45 minutes explaining, because they were asking me, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? And I was explaining we're bound by the California state and the county policies where when children leave without permission because they may call a friend to pick them up and they leave without permission, we are required to file the missing child's report. Even though these children are not intending to go missing, they're going to leave and then they're going to come back, essentially, running away for a couple of hours and coming back. We have to file that missing child report, and then the local law enforcement has to clear that. And we feel terrible that we are pulling resources from the local sheriff's department. That is, by law, we have to do that. Most of the calls with the local sheriff's department is that. It's when our children are leaving without permission and we're filing those reports. But we don't get to share a lot of the positive stories of children that are volunteering at the local farms, at the homeless shelter. We're engaging with local businesses that have provided internships like mechanic internship, cosmetology internships for our children that they're engaging in. They're attending the local schools. We've really found success with the local alternative programs. Our kids have graduated. They're getting 4.0s. Kids that haven't been regularly in school since middle school are getting 4.0s in school, and they're saying things like, children like us don't do well like this. Kids who've left our program have gotten adopted. They've reunified with their families. They're currently 18 and working and living on their own and graduated from school. So these are some of the positive stories. They're engaging with community. We invited one of our partners here, a local church partner that regularly invites our kids to come out to their events, and our kids have gone there and engaged in their programming there. And I know that there was a recent incident where there was a lot of law enforcement that came on site. I wanted to just explain and share about that as well. We had an incident where two of our girls got in a fight, and we were able to safely move one of the girls into her bedroom. That girl never got attacked, but the girl was making threats and encouraging other girls to join her. And so we called local law enforcement to come out and assist. And because so many girls were involved, they ended up calling additional units. But that's really in recent time the most serious incident that we had. And then we went ahead and removed two of the girls immediately. It's also difficult with the county in removing children. We have to document very well any incidents and reports that are going on before we actually remove a child. If a child has really given up on the program and we have to remove them, then but we do have that option. And even some of the kids that are coming to our home, they're from Acton. They're from the local community. They've been removed from their home because their homes have been deemed unsafe. And we actually have a parent advocate that works with the family in their home so that this child can reunify with their families. Our program is a short-term intensive therapeutic program. They're not going to be with us long-term. The goal is for us to provide an intensive support so that they can transition to a lower level of care, which would be a foster home, reunify with their family, or live on their own if they're 18. And so that's the goal. And right now we only have 3 children. We could have up to 6, but as Dave mentioned, we really want to ensure the safety of the children on campus as well as the community, and that's a priority for us to make sure that we are keeping all of those things in mind. I did want to give an opportunity for Latour just to share briefly because she's interacted with some of our kids.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for that time, and thank you, Esther, for all the work that you're doing, as well as you, Dan. We appreciate you. So, yes, my name is Latour Saxton. I am a part of Foundation Christian Ministries located in Palmdale. My husband is a pastor there. He also serves on the CAC with the sheriff, and then also we are a part of the Emerald Valley Coalition Against Human Trafficking, and this was a coalition that was birthed, obviously, from a place of prayer, and really just being an outreach for the community. And what we've found is during COVID, we've had collaboration and collective impact work from local agencies like DMH, like DCFS, other churches, and things like that. And what that's done is it's given us awareness, because most of us didn't understand the problem and how much of how we needed to be aware. I'm a mom of 2 kids that are teenagers, and so we see a lot of what our youth are going through every day. And so being able to learn the signs and then understand what trafficking is was something that our community desperately needed. And then we moved from not just awareness, but we moved into with our coalition action. And what we found is being able to love these kids and meet them where they're at. And I'm so proud of Zoe International because of the work that they do, but the home that they provide, quite frankly, there aren't any services. There's 2 services that we primarily help. Youth services, Zoe is it. They are the vanguard. They're doing all of this amazing work. The home is beautiful. I've had a chance, along with other women and volunteers and other pastors and community members, to actually go to the home, spend time with the kids, and realize that these are not criminals. These are not folks that are young people that are just wayward and just chose to do this life. These are victims, and these are people that need love. And these are young people that, just like my teenagers, yes, they have their moments. Yes, they go through what they go through. But I'm so proud of the evolution of, if you teach a kid, like if you teach these young people just these little small things, like how to take care of themselves, how to have self-love, how to experience life as a child versus as an adult. And so that home has been a beautiful experience. And overall, I can't say just how many testimonies of young girls that have come there and said, wow, I've never been seen before and looked at in this way before. I've never experienced love like this before. No one has ever taught me these things before. Like just your normal things that are many of our kids, I'm sure on this call, have access to, and these babies just don't. It's so great that this home is available to them. And like I said, there aren't any, there's only this home that I know of. And then there's other, other folks that are doing the work, but there's nothing like this. And so I'm just appreciative for this community and how welcoming it has been in the past. And I know that it can be frustrating just with something as new as this, and then the wonder of, is this really making an impact, and does our community actually need it? And I'm just encouraging you, as a person who's been in the home, as a person who's worked directly with the kids, as a person who's engaged these kids to our church and actually commingled them with other youth that are in our community. It is such for the time today, but again, I can't say it enough how special it is in this moment and in this time to be a part of ending slavery of children in our lifetime. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. We appreciate your presentation, and I think at this time we're going to open up to questions, see if anybody's got any questions out there. You go ahead and just show your hand.
Don, I've got a couple questions.
Yeah.
Just a question. You've got 3 kids on site right now. And as I look at the sheriff's report from September, it looks like they were called out to your location at least 3 times. And you have to report anytime children leave without permission. Are any of those kids who left without permission still on site?
We did have other youth in September, but kids that were in September are here now in October. So I don't know which kids exactly, but I can definitely tell you kids who do leave without permission do remain on site. The county and the state will not allow us to remove a child just simply because they run away. It's in all of the group homes in all of LA County, the children, it's very common for the kids to leave without permission. So yeah, that I would say yes, that if kids have left without permission, they are likely still with us. When we would remove a child from care, it would be if they are risking the safety of other children on site or staff, and they're posing a repeated safety risk. And at that point, we're able to call a meeting with the county and present why we need to remove the child. And we'll give a 14-day notice and for the county to find another placement for the child. And that's usually the process. I know when the sheriffs called us, we had to explain to them, because they were asking us things like, why don't you have security inside? Why don't you have security in the home? We had to explain we could barely get security outside of the home in our gates because the state law will not allow us to have security cameras. There's a lot of things that the state requires that have tied our hands to, for example, everything is voluntary. The kids have to voluntarily choose to go to drug treatment. They voluntarily choose to get medical treatment. And that's not just our kids, it's all of our kids in the community. These are the state laws. And so we've found some workarounds with this where we have gotten better at choosing the right kids who come to our home. We don't just accept any child. We're very careful at selecting a child who is ready for programming, who wants change. And so if they do have any drug issues, we require that they go to inpatient drug treatment before they come to our home. Instead of once they come to our home, we can't force them to go to inpatient drug treatment because the state law won't allow it. So those are some of the things that we've found workarounds. We also, in the beginning, when we first opened, they would come with their cell phones because we were told the state law requires them to be allowed to have cell phones, which is very dangerous for our children. And so we have found a workaround where when we select a child, we'll tell them, when you first come to our home, you're not allowed to have a cell phone. So some of the kids will decline our home, so we don't accept them, but the kids who choose to come to our home without a cell phone are the ones that we've allowed on our property. Now what happens though after time, they are allowed to have a cell phone eventually, and obviously sometimes with that cell phone gives them access to contact community members who might come and pick them up and take them somewhere, or might call friends to come and pick them up and take them somewhere. But they've never left and not come back. They've always left and said, I'm going to be back tonight. And so that's what we're working with. We also have a state licensed mental health team on site. So we have a clinical, therapist, on top of our residential staff. We have a whole clinical team that's working with our kids to provide therapy in addressing these issues of what's making them run away and trying to understand their needs.
Yeah, and I'm not questioning the good that you're doing. I understand that there is an incredible good deeds that you're doing here, and the successes that you have are wonderful. But it's the problem children that we hear about, and neighbors come and say, the police are out here, what are we doing? And the way this was presented to us was every girl who comes in there wants to be there. Now, if they want to be there, leaving without permission doesn't fall into that. So I guess I have real mixed emotions on future homes like this in our neighborhood, because if children can leave without permission, that's giving the really permission for children to wander the streets, and that's not what we want. So I'm just I'm confused, because if the girls want to be there, nobody should be leaving without permission.
They want to be there, and what shows that they want to be there is they always come back. In other group homes, homes, they leave and they don't come back. They don't care. They desperately want to stay in our home. What's difficult is that they come from running away every day somewhere else. They've transitioned into our home, and we have girls who are known in the county to run away every day. They come to our home and they don't run away for 60 days. That's unheard of in the county. To the degree that the county social workers will say, we know you guys are doing something amazing because these girls run away every day when they're in any other home. And so the fact that they can stay in our home for 60 days or longer and not run away one time, for our population and for foster children in general in the nation, it really is unheard of for children to not run away when they are known as chronic runaways. They run away because we put structure on them, and we can't just let them leave whenever they want. And part of their trauma is running away. And the reason why we got a 50-acre property is we were hoping that, they have, we want them to run away on our property and not outside our property. And it has worked, because our children are not running away every day. They are going outside when they get upset, but then they are not wandering the streets. They are calling somebody to pick them up, and then they leave the area. They're not, that's why also we are in this community, because this is not a safe area for kids to just be wandering the streets where our home is located. It's not safe for them to be, walking on the streets there. Other homes we know in the city, kids are daily, having people come in and out every day. And we've, because we've made so many changes since we opened in August 2021, what we are experiencing now is quite different from what we were experiencing when we first opened, when we were having more challenges. We had 6 girls at that time, and there was a lot going on at that time, and we immediately, revamped and changed and strategized, and we're constantly adapting and trying to figure out solutions to prevent them from running away.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Oh, yes. Orlando Martinez, deputy.
Hey, just want to throw it out there that I have met with them, and they are very open to change and any kind of suggestions we've given them in the past. I was schooled as far as what the laws, the state laws, and the DCSF stuff that requires them. So a lot of the problems, as far as not being able to lock them in, have a lockdown facility, but they mitigate that by not making the pedestrian gate easily accessible. You have to pretty much trudge through through a bunch of brush and stuff like that. So they are trying a lot of the stuff, but their hands are also tied because of our, and pardon me, dumb laws that California comes up with that don't seem to solve anything. And because we have other homes in Palmdale, and she is correct on it. Like, it's not yours or my baseline of normal. It's a different world. You know, like the running away and stuff like that, the behavior. It's not what normal people are used to, but it is what they're used to. So you got to have like almost like different eyes about what is not acceptable, but like what is like good progress or a good baseline of what they're doing, kind of thing. But they're very open to any suggestions and kind of, you know, pivoting and moving as new challenges come up, kind of thing.
Okay.
Can I say one last thing? Is just that we did a training for Antelope Valley School District social workers as well as Santa Clarita School District social workers. When we were talking with the Antelope Valley social workers and describing human trafficking, the signs of trafficking, how the traffickers recruit children, the social workers said this is happening right now in our community. So even if we weren't here, this is happening right now. Antelope Valley is known for trafficking happening right now with the children in the community. And so when we were working with the social workers, we were helping them identify who the victims are, how they're being recruited by other students in the school. They were very appreciative of how we were helping them navigate the system and figure out how to get help for these children and families. The traffickers are targeting children through the internet, and it is here right now, you know, in the communities, and we work closely with law enforcement. We've been able to get these traffickers charged and put in jail. Some of the cases have turned federal, and children are being taken from Antelope Valley to LA, and sometimes they're brought from LA to Antelope Valley, not specific to our home, just in general. There's hundreds of children that are being trafficked every day in LA County, and so this is happening regardless of us. It's happening every day in the community. It's just hidden. And so we are, you know, finding the bad guys and gaining evidence. And we don't just have this home. We have a whole advocacy program working with over 100 children in LA County, working with law enforcement, going to their homes. Half of them live in their family home, and they're being taken out of their home. The traffickers come to their homes and pick them up because they meet them on the internet, and the children are giving out their addresses. So these are not even foster children. Half of the children come from their family homes. So I just want to alert the community that it's a very real and present danger that's happening all over, obviously, the nation.
Yeah, and I'll just say this: we're really sympathetic with the same changes. Like if it was up to us, we would change the policy. But we're willing to step into this to help these kids until we can see change that we believe would help all kids in this fight. So that's why we'll innovate, and our teams have done a great job, I think, doing that.
And my only issue is that this is within our community, and it's not a normal single family residence. Mm-hmm. So you've got a microscope on top of you, and it's I'm just not sure. And like I said, no disrespect. I understand you're doing a great job, and your successes are good, but and I know your hands are tied, but I think you really need to really be mindful on your vetting of the girls that you're accepting into your program. Mm-hmm. Because if they want to be in your program, there really shouldn't be any leaving without permission.
Great. Thank you, Mary. One question for Officer Martinez. The calls that you've had to respond to, are they declining or are they increasing over the last 2 years that they've been in operation there?
Overall, they've declined. A couple months ago, we had a spike, but that was also because the girls that were there that they've gotten rid of. Okay. So, like anything else, just like if you have a child in any of the school systems out here, it's not one incident. Everything has to be evaluated. Everything has to be like documented. It can't just they have their own policies that they have to kind of go through. Like they're beholden to DCSF, so it's not like one strike and you're out kind of thing. So like some of that stuff takes, a month or so to kind of get documented and all their processes, and then because they're technically DCSF's children, they're not their kids, so they have to go through that whole process.
Okay. Next question is, the local residents that live close to the facility, have those calls increased or have they decreased over the last 2 years?
As far as calls for services?
Yeah, as far as neighbors that are concerned, because usually they come to the town council meeting to vent somewhat, but
yeah, no, there's no significant change there.
Okay, all right, well, great. Well, we appreciate you coming and giving us a presentation. We understand you're doing hard there, and it's something where we are a different type of community, being that most people have ranches or property, and they have moved out here to hopefully get away from the effects of what happens in the inner city. But we understand that you're in the thick of it, and you're doing the best you can, and we appreciate you coming tonight and giving the presentation.
We appreciate you. Thank you for the time, and really thank you for the community. You've really been a key part of the success for a lot of these girls.
Great. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the...
Just a couple of things. I really wanted to recap the recording of the open space so we get everybody on the same page in terms of what that was and wasn't. Within the last couple of days, one of the nearby residents has raised some questions about some grubbing and clearance that seems to be going on what ostensibly, based on where she's put the pin in the map, looks to be part of the unrecorded portion of the project. I also want to cover off very briefly my initial reactions to 62 documents that were disclosed on the 3rd of October by Public Works when I asked them about the documentation surrounding this water main that was installed along Sierra Highway and Valley Sage. So last week at the supervisors' regular meeting, Public Works had put in a proposal to allow the developer RTG to record an area of 38.5 acres, which is to the southwest end of Phase 1. You can see it here on the map, hatched in black. This is an area of open space, so nothing is ever going to be built on it, and it's going to be open space that people in that community, when it eventually gets finished, are able to use for trails and other things. Public Works made a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, and that recommendation had some, bits and pieces in it that I would question. The one thing that really stood out to me was that nowhere in the recommendation did they ever mention the name of the developer. They didn't say RTG is seeking, it was just the developer is seeking, which I thought was unusual. The recommendation says that along with the construction of the off-site water line, the submitted map was reviewed by the county departments and was determined to be in compliance and meet all the applicable conditions. And then they go on to say that pursuant to the Subdivision Map Act, the agency must approve a final map if the subdividers complied with all applicable requirements of state and local law. Now, I've highlighted that because I'm going to come back to this a little bit later in the presentation, so I have a question over that. And approving this recording of this open space then takes the other unrecorded portions of the project and extends their expiration until October of 2027. So it adds another 4 years to this map that's already, I think, about 33 years old. So public comments were submitted to the supervisors before the meeting and during the meeting, both in writing and orally. One comment was received in favour, apparently, but there wasn't actually a comment from this person. It was just somebody who was listed in favour. 10 comments were received in opposition, and if I try and put these different comments in buckets, they're all things we're familiar with. Some were arguing that back in September of last year, Bruce Durbin, the planning officer, said that this was going to be the 6th and final discretionary map extension of the unrecorded map. So how can it be possible to continue that map when you've already told us that it was going to expire in October this year? Others pointed out that the bonding and the multiple agreements aren't in place for the infrastructure that's already under development. Others, took the information that the council has worked on over the last little while and explained that the developer is under the indirect control of a Russian company, Rutsog, and is under the direct control of Rutsog's CEO, Ruben Grigorian. They pointed out that the money's coming from a Swiss bank account, which is under the control of a Cyprus company. And by approving the map, the Board of Supervisors effectively starts to become complicit in helping the breach of these sanctions that are in place that stop doing business, that stop people from doing certain types of business with companies and individuals directly or indirectly in Russia. Other comments, there was I think a reasonable comment that the map recording is really contrived for the sole purpose of extending this map that's already 30 years old. And it's allowing a construction in a high fire hazard severity zone without very outdated environmental assumptions. They pointed out that over the last 16 years, no work's been done on the wastewater treatment plant that was approved in 2007, which was a key requirement of the development of this subdivision that was stipulated by the county. They also pointed out that we know that vendors who are working on the first recorded phase of the project have filed liens on the first phase due to non-payment of invoices by the developer. And they've also confirmed something that we discussed at the last meeting, which is that the bonds for the first phase of the project that were put together in 2002 have expired under California Civil Code of Procedure because the multiple agreement, the original ended and therefore the bonds under law expired. Other comments were, it was explained that because the company is under this direct control of an individual and entity based in Russia, it's effectively subject to the very broad restrictions of these executive orders that we talked about. Public Works' failure to identify the developer by name, I think, and I made this comment myself verbally to the supervisors, it really prevents you from making an informed decision. Why would LA County Public Works not include the name of this company? Back to plausible deniability. We also raised the point that, while we understand that Public Works doesn't have the bandwidth to figure out these connections themselves, they no longer have the ability to deny those connections when they're pointed out to them by a third party. So they lose the ability to deny the connection, I think, once you explain it to them. And you can't just argue that because we didn't see it ourselves, it doesn't exist. It was also pointed out, and again, this is something that I did in my verbal, testimony as a non-town council, but just a resident of Agua Dulce, that this approval really conflicts with the motion that the supervisors passed in March last year after Russia invaded the Ukraine, where they directed the county CEO, and this modification to the resolution was actually made by Catherine Barger and Supervisor Hahn, and they directed the county CEO to investigate prohibiting, I think they wanted to divest county pensions from anything in Russia, and they also wanted the CEO to investigate prohibiting county contracts with companies that do business with Russia. So this sends a very conflicting message because it basically says, well, we're not going to work with companies that do business with Russia, but it's okay for us to do it directly, which I think is just, lip service to the resolution they passed back in March last year. So ultimately what the supervisors decided to do was Catherine Barger abstained because she's had campaign donations of more than $250 from Sycand Engineering, who are working on the Agua Dulce residential project as civil engineers. And in fact, if you look at the online donations, you can see that Mark and Lynette Sycand and their firm Sycand Engineering have actually contributed $9,000 to supervisors' campaign since 2015. I think irrespective of the campaign donations, the supervisor's position is disappointing because Stephanie told us many moons ago when this all came up last year that the supervisor shares the community's concern that development is based on a 30-year-old map and it's been allowed to proceed. She's obviously not that concerned because she decided not to vote, and the remaining supervisors approved the motion unanimously. And then subsequent to that, I was sitting in Ventura enjoying lunch, and I got a call from somebody in the Signal asking for comments on it. So I directed them to the council's webpage and said, look, if you want to read the council's position on this, just go thumb your way through the correspondence. And that resulted in a story in the Signal where they covered this. And obviously, RTG declined to provide any comment on that, but certainly the Signal article raised the same questions that the community has about the connections to Russia. Now, the one thing I would say is that this could all happen again. If you look at this map here, this was the final map that was recorded a little while ago. The area that was just recorded, this tract 5038502, is actually in the middle at the bottom. It's that light green area which doesn't have any houses on it. But you'll notice these red arrows are pointing towards other areas of open space. And I would not put it past the county or the developer to come back in 4 years' time, in 2027, and say, well, what we're going to do now is we're going to record one of the two lots of open space at the very south of the project, perhaps coloured in yellow there, and therefore record that. It's not going to have anything built on it, therefore there's no secret issues, and potentially do that another 3 times to extend this map all the way to October 2039. The reason I say that is because when you look at how the project was originally conceived in 1994, it was a 12-phase project. They then came back recently and revised that to what sits before us right now. But there's no guarantee that they might not decide to do something again and revise the final map so that they can continue to record these open spaces and effectively leave the map open for potentially 55 years, which is utterly ridiculous. I mentioned that there's been some recent activity potentially on the unrecorded project phase. It started to happen this week. A resident who lives next to the project reported seeing removal and chipping of junipers on an area that appears to comprise part of the project where the wastewater treatment plant would eventually go. I asked the resident if they could give a better description, and they did. They said it's basically south of Shady Lane, White Fox, on the side of the hill before Shady Lane dead ends, just before Yucca Hills Road. And she was able to put a pin in the Google Maps, and that gave us an approximate location of where it's going on. And you can see the pictures that she shared of the work. Yesterday was the one in the middle there, today was the one on the right. And you can see how some of this clearing is going on and the vehicles down in the distance. Now, there's no real explicable reason, if this is part of the project, why anybody should be working down there, because it's not recorded and there's no permits in place for that. If we look at the approximate location of where this seems to be happening in conjunction with LA County's GIS system, you can see in that red circle there, these squares hatched in blue there, they are part of the overall project. And then you can see on the right-hand side, I didn't take the areas that are already recorded. But the possible matches for this activity are in these 2 parcel numbers here. Public Works gave some disclosures. After the meeting that we had with Art van der Vis and Anish Saraya back in August, I thought it'd be a good idea to take a look at the agreements between the county and the developer for the water main that was installed along Sierra Highway and Valley Sage Road. And it's really driven by this issue about bonds. And I haven't got all the way through it yet because I've had some other things to deal with over the last little while, but they were disclosed to me on the 3rd and 4th. And I'm up to about May of this year so far. There's lots of emails and email threads and bonds calculation worksheets and discussion between the engineer and the RTG and the county about bonding and what it should be and what's included and what's not, matching up the bonds from 2002 with bonds for 2023. But I can say that the 2002 bonds, as they were, have been revised based on the current rates for the bonding for the type of work that's going to be performed. And as far as I can tell so far, the total bond amount for this project appears to be $21.25 million. That's everything. That's the road, the work from Sierra Highway and Red Rover all the way down Valley Sage Road, and also the storm drain, sewers, road and water infrastructure on the project itself. There are some interesting sort of exchanges that I started to really delve into. In March this year, you remember we were putting quite a lot of pressure on LA County Public Works to explain exactly what was going on with the bonds, because they're telling us, hey, we don't have a signed agreement, we can't give you a copy of that document, but everything's okay. So there were these March exchanges where RTG had told the engineering company, Sycand Engineering, who were assisting them with this, that they would take about 2 weeks to put the replacement bonds in place. And then they came back and said, well, actually what we need stamped copies of your calculation spread, your worksheets for these new amounts, because the insurance company needs them. So LA County turned that around very quickly. And then nothing happened, and they said, well, hang on a minute, you told us 2 weeks ago it would take 2 weeks, what's going on? Then the insurance broker, a company called Moda Insurance, Westlake Village, I think, chimed into the thread and said, well, it's because of the interest rates and the banking crisis, and we're doing our best, but it's just a tough market right now. And then subsequent to that, there's these follow-up emails where the county's asking Sycand's asking the developer, and they're basically saying, well, we keep asking, but we don't know what's going on. And there's an interesting reference where Sycand is basically telling RTG, hey, look, Public Works has been very supportive of the project, especially as it relates to the Adtc Town Council, which kind of stood out. It's almost like they're basically saying, look, the county's been running interference for you, and you really need to step up to the plate and get this figured out. And as to where I am right now, there are still no progress on the bonds by mid-May this year, which is obviously about 4 months ago. But what I would say is that nowhere in the disclosures that I've received have I found anything that says to me yet that those new bonds are in place. And it does look like the bonding that was required for the water main installation along Valley Sage Road and Sierra Highway may not have been in place either. And that's about a $7 or $8 million bond. I think one of it was 5.3 and the other one was 1.9. So I will report back at the next town council meeting in more depth on this, but certainly it starts to give some color now as to why LA County Public Works took the position that they did with the council representatives who met with them back in August, because obviously they're putting pressure on RTG to get these things topped and tailed, and RTG appears to have been taking their own sweet time about it. So we'll see where this all ends, but I'm sure, as I said at the last meeting, there's a lot more to this. So I'd like to suggest one thing, and that is that we send an email to Art Vanderveers, LA County, and Anish Saraya in the supervisor's office on behalf of the resident who's drawn this, clearing activity to our attention, and just ask them to take a look at it, and if it is occurring on part of the unrecorded portion of this project, that they get the developer to stop, not give them a 2-week fix-it ticket. They just tell them, you can't do anything on there until you've recorded it, stop doing it. So that would be my suggestion for discussion with the council.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate the efforts that you put into all these reports and keeping us posted exactly what's going on. As far as them being able to clear any brush, does that constitute, could they claim that it's because it's a high fire zone area that they're clearing the brush, or what stipulation? Okay, so they're not allowed to, basically they're not allowed to.
If you go, in order to do grubbing like they've done on phase 1 and rough grading, they need a grading permit, and you're trying to do this on an unrecorded parcel of land.
Okay.
Well, it's recorded, but it's not recorded as part of the approved development that they have permits to do anything on.
Gotcha. Okay. Mary, do you see a problem sending that letter with that request, or what are your thoughts on it?
It's hard for me to see it based on that picture because it's a long ways away. I just don't want to get into it if they're not doing anything. I'm hesitant to jump in at this point without doing a little bit more research. We're just taking a resident's word on it. Is that what we're getting?
Affecting our relationship that we have with the county right now. So my feeling is not to write the letter, but you know, I'm open to whatever the board, whoever's here that wants to discuss anything. Let's open the discussion up.
Yeah, I look at this as a neighborhood fight, and the council in the past has really stayed out of neighborhood fights. On a larger, more global basis is how we have attacked this in the past, and I think we should continue that. I'm just not sure that this warrants a big red flag.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but I think our feedback to that resident should be, you know, here's the information as best as we can discern it. Feel free to use it as you wish, and here are the two people you should make aware about this if you're concerned about it.
Okay.
Let us know how you get on.
Yeah, I have a tendency to agree with that. I just don't want to overstep where we are right now, and we're in a good spot. We've pointed out a lot of really ridiculous things that are going on with this project, and this just doesn't seem, in my mind, at that same level. So, yeah.
Any comments from anybody else that's on the council? Okay. All right. Well, I think we ought to leave it the way it is, and we'll wait to hear from those homeowners there. All right.
That sounds fine to me. And I'll report back with more information on this public records disclosure. But that's the more concerning thing, because it's suggestive that a pretty significant.
To see if there's anybody on their group that's willing to put forth any effort. All right. We're going to leave it at that.